Welcome to Parenthood Bites, the podcast where we explore life as a parent in tech. I'm your host, Chow, and I have over 15 years of experience in tech, and I'm also currently working as a career coach. I'm the proud mother of 3 incredible boys. In each episode, we have an inspiring guest who will share their remarkable story. You'll find their wisdom and insights both relatable and enriching, because after all, we're all in this parenting journey together. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 71 of Parenthood Bites. We're here with Neha Tiwari, who is the founder and principal at Version Consulting, as well as fractional COO and award-winning digital strategist. She is joining us today to share her firsthand experiences of launching and growing her company during the demanding years of pregnancy, parental leave, and her children's first years. Hi Neha, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for meeting with me today. I know it's middle of the week and you probably have a lot going on with your business and everything. I'd love to hear a little bit about your business, if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I started Version Consulting almost 5 years ago to the week, which is
Wow.
crazy. Yeah, I just realized it was my anniversary. Actually, I was like, oh, wait, that just happened. It doesn't feel like 5 years at all. So 2020 is when I started out. And the reason I started my consultancy was because I really wanted to help a wider breadth of people. I've worked in tech, games, media for most of my career, and it's been wonderful. And I still work a lot in that field, but I wanted to also work outside of that and help business owners of all sizes, work with nonprofits, and also work with more underrepresented groups as well. So that was a big part of my consultancy's mission as well. In terms of like why I did it was just so that I could work with more people, work with people who maybe couldn't afford the resource of having like a right-hand lady or like a fractional COO type person on their team. So yeah, I am all about supporting founders, creative founders, and I also love doing partnerships, working with creators, and a little bit of everything in between, and just really keep the trains running on time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, at what stage do companies reach out to you, and what are the specifics that you help with? Is it strategy, marketing, a little bit of everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I worked with everything from solopreneurs. I'm a one person company and I want to grow, but I don't have the resource to hire somebody full time. So I've worked with that to like, I worked with a global nonprofit for years. So I've done everything and anything kind of in different roles that have to do with marketing, strategy, operations, building out new programs and campaigns, and then managing those, building relationships with creators and brands or between them. It's like kind of a little bit of everything, but definitely in that business strategy and, marketing world, but also working with, like I said, like creative founders. So actually consider creators to be creative founders as well. I worked at YouTube for a little while. So of course I have a good amount of experience working with creators as well and love doing that. But yeah, I'm all about just like supporting founders.
That's really neat. So it sounds like you work with different types of companies, different stages, regardless of the size of the company, you can kind of help.
Yeah, I try to make it so I can work with as many cool people, as I call it, as I can. And that's been a really nice perk of having my own business, is just really being selective about the people that I work with and making sure that they're people who are just good, kind people. And they're often doing work that's really important, or in some cases, like helping the world through nonprofits. And in other cases, they're just really great people who need help doing what they do. It's been really wonderful. And like I've supported a lot of women and those who identify as women, as well as queer and BIPOC folks as well as part of this, which has been really, really great.
That's really awesome. I love that. So, how can people reach you if they want support?
Yeah, you can either reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can also, I have a form on my website, versionconsulting.co, where you can fill that form out and reach out if you think you need this kind of support. Really, again, I'm an all-rounder. I do from the big strategy stuff, even down to some tactical things if and when needed. I never am afraid to push up my sleeves and get in there if I need to. And of course, like I know a lot about about content. I've worked in content and media for a very long time. So that kind of stuff comes very easy to me. So I'm happy to help with that as well.
And we'll have links to, your website and things like that in the show notes as well. And I think we have another episode later on where we're going to talk a little bit more about like your motivation further behind your business and all of that. And to jump into kind of your kids, as you were talking about growing your business, I was like, oh my gosh, and your kid just turned 6? Like how? So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that too. But can you start with telling us, how many kids do you have and what are their ages?
Yeah, so I have 2 kids. I have my son who just turned 6, and then I have my daughter who's 3.5. So yeah, I feel like whenever I tell people that, they're always like, "Oh, you're in it right now." And it's like, yes, yes, I am in it. That is a very good way to put it, where you can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, where, you have this, your first kid who's gaining independence every single day and getting to be more and more articulate with their needs and all of those things, which is great. And then you have the younger kid who still is fairly dependent, needs your help with things, is not quite as articulate. And so it's like you're straddling both of these worlds of like having a toddler and then you have this young kid who like wants to be older than they are, it feels like sometimes. And then your younger one kind of wants to still sometimes be like a baby, or it feels that way, even though they don't say that, but it feels that way time to time. So it just feels a little bit like you have 2 kids in 2 different stages, which reminds me a lot of when she was a newborn, or when she was under 1 year old and he was 2, like 2 going on 3. Again, 2 very different stages. She was an actual baby and he was solidly a toddler. And so that was very different. So I feel like we're there again in terms of development where it feels very different. But yeah, again, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like I have friends who have 5 and 7-year-old or a 7 and 9-year-old, and it's like, okay, cool. Like the paths, they converge and they sort of start getting into like similar things or similar stages of independence and things like that. So I think that part gets easier. I know there's other challenges, but at least that part would be easier.
For sure. And also, do they kind of play together? What is their interaction like?
Yeah, they do. Now they do. This is a recent thing, I would say, in the last, 6 months or so. I think, they go to school together now. So I think that bridged some things. Yeah, they're actually in the same class, which is really cute. This was the one opportunity that we saw for them to share that experience. And it's been really special to have them be in this. They go to Montessori school. So they're in the same, he's in a kindergarten and she's, in a preschool, but it's the same class. So that really, I think, has been good for their relationship. And yeah, I see them interacting a lot more together at home, and they do play with each other and want to play with each other, which I think before she sort of wanted to play with him and he was like, no, like I'm good. I don't know if I really want her to play with my stuff,
Because they're so little, right? You don't know if they'll understand. So the older one's like, you might mess it up.
Yeah, you might mess it up or you're going to like break this thing or, because they just don't have much control sometimes of their body. But I think that she's gotten older and better with all of that just being at school. So I think that, yeah, I mean, they definitely do play with each other. They're still fighting and we still have to, listen and make sure that no one's crying or
it's too quiet.
yeah, or it's too quiet. Exactly. And then there's some mischief happening.
Yeah. So how long are they going to be able to be in the same class?
Unfortunately, this is it. It's like this last basically spring, and we may do like summer session too. We're kind of up in the air about it right now. But then, yeah, then my son will join first grade. The school is basically up until age 6. So he'll be aging out of it. So then he'll be going to a public school, which is kind of scary for all of us, but exciting. And he's actually really great with new stuff. So I think he's going to do fine. And then we're actually going to put her, it's the same school, but it's a little bit separate because they keep the little kids separate, but she'll be in a TK class too. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're close enough in age that they'll eventually be in like the same school, same middle school, same high school. It's not like he's out and then she goes. Yeah, yes. There will be some overlap.
Yeah, the dreaded double pickup. And I think that was part of why we weren't sure we were going to keep her at this school for TK. And then we were like, well, then it's like a double pickup and they're pretty far away from each other and double drop off. And I don't know about that. So I think we're probably going to put them in the same. So it's like at least a single point.
No, that's so smart. I got 3 kids in 3 schools right now. I got one in high school, one in middle school, one in elementary school. And I tell you, those schools, I don't think they talk to each other. They don't care. They don't care about how you're going to...
The bell schedule, I was just actually like problem solving this because Wednesdays are early release, right? But her early release is like, I don't know, 30 minutes before his early release. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I pick her up and then we like hang out in the car for 30 minutes and then like wait for it's the same school. Like, that's the same school. It's like you should be taught like there are
Right.
people who have kids that are going to both. What are they supposed to do? Or am I supposed to drop her off at home and then go get the other one? And then, like, am I just spending like an hour plus picking up and dropping off?
Right. There's not enough time really for you to go home. Like you go
No.
home in a minute, you're going to have to go back
Yeah.
out. And if you keep your kid in the car, she's going to get
Yes.
restless, right?
So, like, what do we do? I guess, I don't know, we'll find a nearby park or something and, like
That's what I was thinking. A nearby park or
yeah.
go for a walk or something.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly, go for a walk and just, like, hang out, I guess, but, like, today it's raining here, and I'm like, I don't know what you do then.
yeah.
It's like, you just I don't know, iPad, I guess, or I don't even know, like, what you do. They don't use the iPad that much, actually.
Or like a game in the car or something, right? Like,
Maybe, yeah. This is, like, a future me problem, but we were talking about that today of, like, "Wait, how are we gonna do this?" Because it's, like it's just a matter of, like it's,
yep.
like, 25 minutes, it's not even, like, 30, so it's
Yeah.
this weird pickup schedule that we'll have to deal with for and then, hopefully, though, on the next year, then they'll be on the same bell schedule, so then it'll be fine, but, like, this awkward year, it's, like, just gonna be dumb.
We have awkward couple of years where they're all in three different schools, three different bell schedules. And then we're like, okay, eventually, the middle one will also go to high
Yeah,
school. Then we'll have just two in high school, one in elementary. That's a little bit more manageable.
so much
But
better.
I'm telling you, it's like, why don't they just talk to each other? What about for the parents that have multiple kids? They kind of
Yeah,
just accommodate for the one. And it's like, okay, but then we have to go back to work or whatever it is.
yeah.
Otherwise, it's like, okay, now I have to block out an hour and a half for pickup. When in reality, I'm spending most of that time waiting in the car.
Yeah, you're just sitting on the car. Yeah, and then you have to, like, buffer time to get parking or whatever it is so that you can pick up and or walk up.
Yes.
It seems like that's, like, the system that seems to be, I don't know, more of a thing that I've been hearing from my friends too, and it's similar to where we are too, where they want you to park and down the street and then walk up and pick
Because pickup is a whole nother thing. With all the parents, all the cars trying to squeeze in, you're just like,
up. I'm gonna have to, like, learn that whole thing, and, I've heard the horror stories of, like, "Oh my god, there's so many bad drivers," or
yes.
all of that fun stuff, which yeah, so I think it's gonna be a learning curve for all of us.
For sure. So it sounds like your business was kind of starting when your kids were born, right? Tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
how did you manage that? And also pandemic, I think, was around that time too.
It all was happening. I got pregnant with my son when I was VP of video and content at Fandom. So I found out I was pregnant in the summer and there was a lot going on there. We were, in the middle of like acquiring a company, we were being acquired, like all this stuff was happening. And I was also pregnant and nauseous and like just extremely tired. I remember and I was commuting over an hour each way, taking BART and all of this stuff. And
Yep, I know that.
and it's like the kind of thing where it's like I had to like tell people like, "Excuse me, hi, I'm pregnant. I'm very tired and I'm very nauseous. Can I please sit down?" Dude who is young, who should not be sitting in that seat anyway, because
hmm
it's like for elderly or disabled or people who are pregnant. So I used to have to ask people to give up their seats and stuff like that. It got like rough. I had a high risk pregnancy, so it made things a little difficult. Travel was part of my job, but I wasn't able to do it as much and things like that because of the pregnancy. And ultimately what happened was after the acquisition, they had wanted to move a lot of the content operations to LA, which strategically made a ton of sense. But I was like, as you know, I am pretty pregnant or I'm going to have this kid. Like there's no going back. Like this is it. I'm moving forward. And I was like, I am not moving to LA. I don't have that interest. My family's up here. We have we have our home. Like it's not what I want to do. And so, yeah, they actually like offered me an exit, which was great. And I was able to spend that first year with my son and also recuperating. I actually had a traumatic birth. I had something called a PP8, which is a postpartum hemorrhage. It's when you lose a ton of blood when you give birth. And in the olden days, or if you ever watch movies where women died in childbirth, it was usually this 9 out of 10 times. It was because they couldn't stop the bleeding. So you just like bleed out. So it was very touch and go for me. I was in the ICU for several days and then I was in the hospital for a week after my son was born. I like couldn't walk and stuff. It was like I had to build back from square one and so imagine all that. Plus I had a C-section. So I was recovering from that and I was trying to nurse and pump and do all those things that you're doing as like a new mom. But we were blessed enough to have my mother-in-law stay with us for basically the first 5-6 months. She was living with us and helping. She was doing overnight feed. Like she was in it. She was part of the care team. And I don't know how we would have done it without her because again, I really was a zombie. I was like a zombie version of myself. And so it's funny because after I had left that job, I actually did interview at a couple of companies. I was like waddling into interviews
Oh my
because I was
gosh.
like,
And it was in
I was like,
person.
it was in person and I was huge and I was so self-conscious. I remember being like, I'm very clearly pregnant. There's no way they're not going to know, and like, and you feel like there's bias, right? Like who's going to hire a pregnant lady and stuff. And I went pretty far down the line in one interview process. And actually, after all of this happened with the birth, I was like, thank God I didn't get that job because I would have just been like, I think 2 months in or something when I gave birth. And it would have awful. Like I couldn't have imagined the pressure to go back after, 6 to 10 weeks, right? There's no way I could have. I was barely functioning as a human. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot to be desired in our policies here in America. And of course, I think some things are now going to get worse, but I'm thankful for what I had in terms of any sort of leave and disability benefits, because I think women go through so much. And, the 6 weeks that you're given, if it's a vaginal birth versus like, I think it's 10 weeks if it's a cesarean, it's just not enough. You're just still recovering. You're just in this and you're trying to figure out this new life, whether if it's your first child or even when you have your second child, you're like, okay, I have this one kid and now I have this new kid. And like, this is a new dynamic and I'm trying to pay attention to my first kid, but I have to, bond with the second kid and like, feed them and do whatever you have to do. And if you have more than one kid, then you kind of have to split it with your partner who's taking on the more independent kid, and you're with the baby. At least that's what we did. But yeah, I mean, like all that to say, it was a journey. So basically I spent a year recuperating and, rebuilding myself and also dreaming of what was next. I actually, during that process in that first year of my son, I did interview for this really great role. I think I was in the final two for consideration for this role. And they wanted me to do a full day of interviews, including an evening portion of dinner. And I was like, I am nursing my son because he was 5 months at the time, 5 or 6 months old. He actually was before he was on solids. So yeah, he was like, it must have been 4 or 5 months, something like that. And I was like, I need space to pump. I need a fridge or a freezer or a freezer. And they were like, we don't really have those facilities. And I was like, there's like nowhere that I can like privately do this. I had to plug in. So it was like, it couldn't do it in a bathroom or something, unless if it was, and they're like, no, we just have the staff bathroom, which is like stalls, but there's not like a room we can like give you to do this. And for me, that was a huge red flag. And then I also was like, look, I can't really do a full day. It's really hard because I need to be able to nurse my son and I need to be able to like, like have contact with him. And I just wasn't ready to like leave him for a full day into evening thing. I was like, can we split it up in 2 days or over a few days? Because it was a local thing, a local company. And I was like, I'll come back, like we can like split it up and we tried to like work this out. And ultimately it couldn't work out. Like they just like didn't have any options for me. And I just bowed out. I said, you know what? I don't really think this is the right opportunity for me right now. And I bowed out and was like, oh, well, but it sucked. I was really excited about it. I think I could have done great at that role. And I think that also kind of inspired my idea of I just need to work for myself. Like I'm tired of dealing with this stuff, with this like asking for accommodations or people just not understanding your lifestyle or like not making it easy for me to be a mom, which I need to be. Like my son relies on me for food. I am his food source. And that's my number one priority. That was a catalyst for me to just be like, you know what, I need to just do my own thing. And so I had applied for my LLC in late 2019, started putting together a business plan in 2019 and all of that. And then, it all came through in 2020 and then the pandemic happened.
Wow. I mean, good for you for making that call, right? A lot of times we're like, oh, maybe, they don't have the accommodations. We'll just try to work around it or whatever. And it's like, why? Like you said, that is your child that you're prioritizing,
Yeah.
and for the company to force you to decide between, hey, my kid and like, no, that's indicative of what they might do in the future, right? How they treat parents.
That's how I felt about it. And I was just like, if you don't have like, I'm not out here trying to build. I could, but also like, at the time I was like, this is like 2019. I mean, it's not, this is not 1999 or 1989 for that matter. Mothers' rooms are a common thing. Like, and they had been in companies that I had worked at previously. I worked with women who were pumping and they had their fridge and their place to wash their pumping parts and like stuff like that. Like it wasn't that uncommon during that time. And so I was just shocked that like this company didn't have anything. And I was just like, and as you know, it's a biological thing. I can't just not.
Right.
Like you can't. You are like literally, it's like you have a ticking time bomb strapped to your chest. Like that is what it is. And it's extremely uncomfortable and dangerous because if you don't, then you can get mastitis, which is horrible. And like, and I've had that before. And I was like, no, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. I'm not risking that because it's awful. It's just terrible. And so, yeah, I know it was the right choice now. I'm actually very, very happy with that choice. And I've never regretted it. But yeah, I got my LC in March of 2020, which, that is also when California shut down for the pandemic and our lives had changed because my son was home. My son was in part-time daycare. We were just about to put him into full-time because I had a full-time slot open up finally. And I was really going to focus on my business. I had some stuff lined up. But then, yeah, as soon as California closed, my husband's home from the office. So he's now working from home and my son is now home full time. And I'm trying to do Zooms with the daycare that he was at, which with a 1-year-old, what even like we used to do like a circle time story time. And I mean, they were trying and I appreciate them for trying, but like you just can't do it that age. It's just not a thing. So trying to do that and then just not be so terrified of like what was going on or just, but I was really, really scared. And actually that's part of what drove me to get my first client.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my brother was actually a frontline worker. So he was working in a local ICU. And if you remember around March, there started to become this shortage of PPE. So, they didn't have masks, namely. They didn't have eyewear, they didn't have gloves, and they didn't, the CPAPs, like all this stuff was just, they were running out and there was no supply fast enough because the wards were filling up. And so then the doctors, like they were like reusing masks or sometimes they were tying bandanas and, doing all this crazy stuff because there was just no materials or they were running out of materials. So me and kind of this like very random crew of people, I actually was trying to figure out like how exactly did we all get together, but there was like a grad student from UC Berkeley, which was like my alma mater, which was cool. There was a chick who did legal at Uber. There was another guy who worked at Tesla before it was evil. Like there, so I think, and then there was like, and so forth. I think, the list went on and it was, a group of we grew to about like 20 people, but we all got together and tried to gather as much PPE as we could in the Bay Area. So we were asking people to look in their fire kits and do you have masks like in your basement or do you have gloves or do you have this? And we actually did work with, I believe, Uber and Lyft to, get drivers and stuff like that. Plus we had our own volunteers driving all over the Bay Area, collecting items and inventorying them and then dropping them off at different hospitals that needed them. So we were in touch with, I was actually helping a lot with like the partnerships and like working with different hospitals. And we were also thinking about equity and accessibility, places that just didn't have, they just didn't have as much budget as other hospitals. So making sure that they were served and that they were getting PPE as well. So it was a really fun, actually really fun in a dark time because it felt like we were really doing something in a time where most of us felt extremely powerless and like there was nothing we could do. It felt like we were getting together and actually doing something and doing something constructive. And yeah, within the first like just a little over a month, I think we had moved 170,000 pieces of PPE to Bay Area hospitals. And that was huge. We actually did partnerships with Ford and Boston Scientific to create face shields. There was a lot going on and we were juggling a lot of balls and I felt like I was working all the time. I was just on it. And yeah, just making sure that like, again, that our hospital, and I mean, they knew to contact me if they needed something specifically. So we would try to source them. And again, and it was actually great for me from a career standpoint too, only because it was like this thing where you go out on your own and you're like, are my skills, again, I worked in tech games media, like, are my skills like transferable to something else? This had nothing to do really with any of those things. And the answer was yes. Yes, I can, actually doing logistics for something like this and partnerships is not that different than doing that for like E3 or something, which I had done felt like 100 times by then, or any like, large trade show or event or whatever. Like it was not that different actually. So it was really, really wonderful. We worked together for about like 4 or 5 months, and then luckily then like supply had caught up. And I actually was looking back, like I actually have some like emails saved from that time that I got from, hospital managers and stuff like thanking us and for all of the effort that we put forth. But it was really special and it totally was invigorating and was like, this is why I'm doing this. So I can have different clients. I can like work with nonprofits. I can work with cause-based businesses. I can, as well as still like work in the industry that I came from, but also like do this stuff too.
Wow, that's such an inspirational story. It's like not only did you make a huge impact, it also helped you realize like, oh, my skills transcend much further than just
Yeah.
in gaming and tech and whatever,
Right.
right? It's like
Yeah.
any industry, like what we were talking about earlier, it's like any company, any industry you can support because your skills can be transferable to all of those things.
I've mentored quite a few women in this industry, in the tech media and games industry. And like, I feel like that's one message. It's strange because like you work in this industry and you think, okay, this is all I can do. This is all that I can do. And I think as women, especially, we buy into that of like, I am in this box. And this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is what I'll do forever. And no, that's not true. You don't have to be in that box. And those skills do transfer over. So if you feel a calling to either, like work for yourself or work in a different industry or, a different vertical or whatever it is to move over to something else, I say by all means try it because you'd be surprised. You really may find something that you love and that in my case, like, yeah, it does. Like it feeds my soul to do this kind of work. And I usually, actually, no, I've almost always had like one every year at least have one, if not more, nonprofit clients. And I hope to still continue that. Like it's actually something that I seek no matter how busy I am with other stuff. I always want to give back and pay forward and like support someone who's working on something that's cost-based.
That's so awesome. I know I keep saying that, but like it really is. So can you tell me a little bit about like, when your daughter was born, because you had your business at that time. Were you able to take some time off then, or what was that like?
Yes, I was. I was working when I was pregnant with her as well. And I actually had a high risk pregnancy with that one too. Luckily, the labor part was way smoother. It was actually very, very healing. So I was happy for that. But I did have a repeat C-section. So that was, of course, rough to heal from. But yeah, I took about 3 months off and was with her that whole summer. And then I jumped into a new contract in October, which, it was actually like good. The amount of work that I was doing was like very much like a part-time thing. So I was able to, yeah, but again, we had like 2 kids at home. So it was pretty hard. It was like, that was like really, really, and I was like pumping and nursing and she was exclusively breastfed. So it was a lot on me and my body, but we made it through somehow. And at that time, then I think when she was born, my mother-in-law did come up and she was with us for a few months because again, we had the 2 kids and it was hard to manage with that. And then she came back up when my daughter was like 6 months or something and spent a month or so with us. So it was like kind of like that. Like she would come up and kind of help us out every 6 months or every few months or something like that, kind of when we needed it, which was very appreciated. But again, we just didn't really have childcare.
Oh my gosh, that's so tough managing 2 kids under 5 while building your own business. It really is a true testament to your resilience. Well, thank you so much, Neha, for sharing your journey with us. In our next episode, we'll continue this conversation delving into how you navigated the pandemic with 2 young children and a growing business and how your family and business have evolved together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today on Parenthood Bites. We hope you found our episode informative and entertaining. If you're a parent in the tech world or know someone who is, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at chow@parenthoodbites.co, and we'll be thrilled to add your experiences to our interviews. That's chow, CHIAO, @parenthoodbites.co. And to our potential sponsors out there, if you're a business or know of one that would like to support and partner with our podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also reach us at chow@parenthoodbites.co. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, take care and stay curious.